Angelina Grimke to Christian Women of the South. Angelina was born February 20 of 1805. She was the youngest of 14 children, and she grew up in a wealthy and pro-slavery family. They preached a Episcopal religion, and they also owned a home, a plantation, and slaves. Angelina was an American abolitionist, political activist, women's rights advocate, and a supporter of the women's suffrage movement. At a young age, Angelina believed that slavery was wrong and went against her family's wishes. She spent all her childhood seeing slavery, cruelties, and little did she know that this was going to shape her life. Angelina and her sister Sarah started helping the slaves by teaching them how to read, write, and showed them how to pray as well. Angelina and her sister were the first women to speak against slavery publicly. Their mission was to end slavery and to promote racial and gender equality among women. Angelina and her sister were considered the only notable examples of white Southern women abolitionists. In 1829, Angelina joined her sister and became a member of the Philadelphia Female Anti-Slavery Society. Here she wrote a letter to William Garrison, which was named the Appeal to the Christian Women of the South. William Garrison then published the letter in a newspaper named The Liberator, without Angelina's consent. Angelina was furious and did not approve of the publication because the Quakers from her religion were against females speaking on controversial topics. Publishing the letter was eventually an advantage to Angelina, as it launched her career as a speaker and abolitionist writer.
Angelina Grimke, through her essay, tried to persuade Christian women to raise their voice against slavery. In order to persuade and connect with the audience, Angelina strongly addressed gender, government, religion, and freedom of expression. Angelina mainly appealed to women, specifically in her essay, and appealed to the Christian women of the South with the intentions to give voice to those individuals whom at the time were not often listened to. And we are able to prove this by finding phrases like "I now address you" throughout her statement. Not to mention that all of this again had the purpose of convincing women to speak and spread the word supporting the abolition of slavery.
On May 18, 1838, Angelina Grimke gave a speech at Pennsylvania Hall. Her speech talked about how she thought slavery was wrong and how she empathized with slaves as she grew up owning and just talking with them. She also states that slavery has horrors that could never be described, saying it has demoralizing influences and takes away basic human happiness. She states how people who visit the South get entertained by slave owners because slaves to the East are more fascinating, yet they have not seen their living quarters or the food they eat because they are treated terribly. This speech was monumental. Not only was it a speech given by a woman at the time, but because it was a speech given to a mixed audience. In her speech, she talks about the effects of slavery and how it goes against basic human rights. From a young age, Angelina Grimke believed that slavery was wrong. She supports a free republican government, which is a government that believes in allowing the states to have more power, as slavery was much more prominent in the South than in the East. She was also an abolitionist because she believed that slavery went against basic human rights and went against the Bible. Besides being an abolitionist, she believed in gender equality and wanted to break gender norms so that people were just seen as people and not man and woman.
So for the religious aspect of her appeal, Grimke is addressing Christian women. That's her main audience, is Southern Christian women. And in order to make a compelling argument against slavery, she resorts to the ways of Christianity to make her claim. So a quote that we pulled from her appeal says that slavery must be attacked with the whole power of the truth and the sword of the Spirit. You must take it up on Christian ground and fight against it with Christian weapons, whilst your feet are shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. So here you can see that she's using Christian principles in order to persuade this group of women to speak out against slavery by using terms like fight against it with Christian weapons. And with the religious aspect of her appeal, there's also some correlation to the Second Great Awakening. And in particular, she uses moral suasion to persuade this group of women into thinking slavery is a sin. So going back to a little bit of her backstory, before leaving Philadelphia, she realizes that during the Second Great Awakening, many people were concerned about individual sin, and this led to an emphasis on individual salvation. In Grimke's case, her argument of slavery being a moral issue and that it opposed the principles of Christianity was meant to prompt other Christian women to speak out against it. And this is similar to many reformers from the Second Great Awakening. So as for her impact, Grimke's attempt to influence Southern Christian women was a prime example of women using their voices to advocate for social justice. This document was a significant piece during the abolitionist movement, as Grimke believed that slavery was a sin and Christian women had an obligation to petition against it. Her persuasive tactics aimed to win over Christian women of the South to join the abolitionist cause, helped pave the way for other abolitionists and women who would continue to fight for social change and equality.
Overall, Angelina Grimke was against slavery and disliked how slaves were being treated in the South. She was a women's rights activist who fought for slaves and women's rights. Growing up in the South, she came to realize from an early age that slaves were just people just like her. Lastly, with all facts stated above, she was an abolitionist who fought for slaves and women because she believed that slavery went against basic human rights and it went against the Bible.